Taking time out of your day to join us with the International Association of Wood Carvers. We named it that because we have carvers from not just the United States, but all over the world joining us. So we wanted to come up with a name that incorporated everybody. Today we're their knives. I think they're going to spend some time in their shop talking about how the knives are made. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them, and then we'll have some information at the end that we'll talk about before we sign off. So, Holly, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Alrighty. All right. I know Blake had mentioned something about us being in the shop. We're actually in the it sounds a little weird, but should our screen be black on our side? Because we don't see no one. Rich actually brought in some things because we get a lot of questions. How do we do it? How do we make stuff? How does it go together? We share a lot on our Facebook. We've started sharing some videos on Instagram. We show some stuff on YouTube.
You can't hear anything for
him. Can everybody hear us?
No, we're on.
You're on? Oh,
okay. Oh, I said somebody else. All right. Skylar's joined us. So we brought in some things to kind of show some pieces and parts of how we do certain things. And we're hoping this is very interactive. We encourage people to ask questions that we can answer. So it kind of lets us know, I guess, what people are looking for, what they want to know, what they're curious about. We're not opposed to personal questions as long as they're not too out of way. So that's fine too. But Rich brought in some, you want to give me those spacers? Let's start with that. Okay. Give me this. Because I'm dealing with this little screen up here. I don't know if you guys can see this. Everybody, I would assume almost everybody knows that when we buy these, or when you buy knives from us, you know that we have like a white spacer in here and a black spacer. This is one that's just been glued up. It's not shaped. This is what it looks like. This is actually detail steel right here. Okay, and you got a black and white piece where this is like the rough out steel. Okay, so you got your white spacer here and your black piece here. And I guess one thing that we don't really show a whole lot of on videos is these come in sheets, and then Rich routers a little slot in them. And I don't know if you can tell too much. There's actually burrs all over this. Okay. And I know you're like, oh, wow, really? No, really, it's very time consuming because when he cuts these, I go along with a knife and I trim the burrs off of them. Got to do that small stuff before you can even start gluing up. That's just, and you're like, oh, that's monotonous, that's boring. It is, but that's part of it. That's part of making custom and handmade knives. So that's one of the things that goes into it. Since I brought this up here, this is actually 2 pieces of wood. There is a seam because inside is routed and they're sandwiched together with all of this. And we showed a lot of videos of our vise shed that we have, where we have how many vices?
109.
109 vices with C-clamps where we glue everything up together and we put them out there. I'm going to let Rich talk a little bit because he brought in some samples of steel. And he's going to talk to you a little bit about those because when we buy steel, it's actually a certain width and a certain length. And that has to be cut down either lengthwise and widthwise, depending upon what someone orders. As a matter of fact, we just bought ourselves a fancy new bench grinder to help us cut our steel because Rich here has been doing it on a wheel, which is very dangerous. Been doing that way for a long time. So we're gonna break out of the mold, buy a new piece of equipment, but Rich will talk about some steel.
This is our rough out steel, and it comes in a blank like this. And out of this shape, of course, our rough out knives, but a lot of the Don Mertz scimitar blades and things like that, which that blade there is a Don Mertz. Sometimes I'll shape them before I put it in the handle. Sometimes I just put the steel in there, like that. Then I'll shape it afterwards.
Make sure you can see it in there.
And this is, people talk about
Hold up there.
the flex blade. I don't do nothing to make it flex.
You gotta turn it sideways so they can't see it.
It flexes on its own
And why does it flex on its own?
because it's thinner steel. So anybody that says I'm making a detail knife and they start calling it a flex, it flexes itself. If it's real thick steel, at least in Helvie terms, it's a rough out blade. Even if it's small, like our mini detail is half of this goes into a real
And this is
small
rough out
knife.
steel.
This is our rough out, so it's a thick bladed knife, but we call it the mini detail.
And Rich, let me ask a question here. When you talk about that flex steel, that's not your grind. So do we as carvers lose any strength in our blades when we use a flex knife, like let's say a Chris Hammock's knife where it flexes quite a bit?
Now,
Well-
Chris Hammock knife is not thin steel.
It is.
It
thick.
is a rough out blade that I make it flex. So to say, yes, you probably do lose some strength, but probably not much because the spine of it is still the same thickness as this. Right down the center, well, just above center.
So what are you explaining the flex, the Chris Hammock flex blade to him?
That one was.
Because, hey, Tony, sometimes it's hard to teach when you know. I don't carve and I don't know, so I'm going to try to help teach in layman's terms because I need layman's. This is our rough out steel. The Chris Hammock flex blade comes out of the thicker rough out steel that's about 50 thousandths thick.
Okay.
What Rich does to make that steel flex, it's not because it's thin. He actually gives it a diamond bevel where the strength, the strongest part of the blade is down the center of that blade on the Chris Hammock knife.
Right,
That
so-
means your tip is your weakest point on the Chris Hammock knife.
right,
Anybody
so
who
in
has a
other
Chris
words-
Hammock,
So in other words, the spine is really thin on Chris's. We know that. So on the other blade where you're talking about that flex steel, that you're saying the spine is
Right.
going to be thicker there. So
right, it'll be the same. Yeah, the spine on the flex, the thinner steel that we call a flex knife, and it's actually our detail steel. It's about 35 thousandths thick. So you get that same thickness on the spine of the blade. But of course, this end where it's sharpened, where starts his bevel, of course, it's thinner there. But yeah, it is thinner, and it does flex. We actually had a guy it was a guy that bought one of our medium detail steel, which is what we use this on, but it's not as wide as this. It's actually about, about 3/8 inch? Okay. And he bought a 2 inch. We sell them in 2 inch. Some people like that flex and that thinner steel, even in a 2 inch, because they can kind of curve it up in there when they're slicing through. They do flex and bend because it's thinner steel, but there's a level of common sense involved there too. He took a picture of it where his entire 2 inch blade was bowed. You can't get in there and go and dig. I mean, you can't do that with any knife. That's what your tools are for. But yeah, they flex because the steel is thinner. But if I want to sit here and bend this down, I can, but I'm not going to get it straight again either. So again, even though it's flexible, again, there's a little bit of common sense in play there. Just like with Chris Hammock's flex blade you're talking about, where it does use our rough out steel. Even though Rich makes the thickest part down the center of the blade in his knife, okay, that means the tip is its weakest point in that. Most of the time, your tip is your weakest point. So you hear a lot of times people say, I broke my tip. You sent me a bad knife. No, you broke your tip. The good thing is fixing a tip is easy to do. It's very easy to do. And we have a lot of videos out there on how to do that too.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope I didn't just get long-winded with that, Tony.
No. I think it's a good thing because really I haven't had any tips break, and I have a whole array of knives. So it's more of understanding how much we can flex before we're really starting to stress the blade out. I mean, you watch
Yes,
Chris,
sir.
Chris will take his, and of course, it just bend it right over. So
Yeah,
Well, the
I think you're
Flex-
right.
The one we call the Flex does flex more than Chris Hammock's Flex.
Right.
Because it's thinner.
Because there's no thick spine in it.
Yep. They all are working very well, at least for me.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, we thought more along the lines of the people would ask us questions. I'm not sure how many new people don't know the story of Helvie knives or actually what they want to hear from us, you know?
We decided to do it in the office instead of in the shop because our daughter's here, you know, and she's in the house. And honestly, I have ham and beans on the oven. I mean, you know, so that's our dinner tonight. She's kind of babysitting it. So it just was kind of conducive for us to try to stay in the house and keep an eye on her while we're doing this.
I drew this, Tony. This is, of course, bigger, but that's what Chris's blade looks like.
Does that make sense?
It's like a kite. Got kind
Yeah,
of a
because that's
kite.
what we initially saw. We initially saw that bevel was right there, like you talked about that diamond grind, and you could see it down there. And when you pulled out that flex material, that was contrary to what we had seen there. Now, we've had some other knives out there, some of the upsweep knives that you know, I purchased from others who of your brand, and I noticed that it had a little bit of flex in it, but didn't have that diamond style grind into it. So yeah, it's just a question based on that, but it's all good stuff.
Great. Perfect. Unless somebody starts to ask questions, we got some knives that are completed, and I thought maybe we would show some different handle styles and blade styles. If you want to use your hands, but you got to make sure, see, that's us, to make sure it's up where people can see it.
Yeah, this is the Floyd Radigan handle style with just their typical 1 3/4 rough out blade.
Okay. A lot of people ask us about the wood that we use for our knives, the colorful laminated wood. It's no secret. We don't make the wood. We buy the wood in great big panels. And we have to strip it to width, and then we strip it to length, and then we have to router it, and we put 2 pieces together. This wood is actually made here in the United States and purchased in the United States. It's actually referred to as Dymilux now. It's the same chemical makeup. It's dyed hardwoods that's compressed together and infused with plastics. So it is, I probably can't hear it.
It's very
You can
hard.
hear me knock on it. It is hard. And we know we've bounced them off the cement before when you're buffing them and they slip, as long as they don't stab yourself in the foot. That's happened. But yeah, it is very durable stuff. And it's not real cheap to buy when people look at it. But you know, you kind of get what you pay for sometimes. So that's what we use. All right. And this one happens to be, a lot of people call this one orange and black when they want it. They actually call it yellow and black. You know, so this is one of them. Trade me.
This is our most popular handle.
Yeah, this is one of the more popular handle styles. Let's see if I can get it in there. The finger groove. The rough out blade. Again, just colorful wood. Hold up the next one. Give me that one.
This ended up being our first signature series knife out of cherry, of course, with this signature. This is a Gerald Sears handle. So Gerald, when he said yes, pretty much kicked off the whole signature series thing. That's now, I think we have 40 guys. Well, 40 guys and.
Oh no! Don't look at me. I
gals.
quit counting. I'm confused.
Yeah, I don't remember them anymore. I got a book I got to look through sometimes to figure out what signature knife looks like from somebody.
I'm gonna keep that one out. Yeah, you can put this one out. I'm gonna keep that one out. I got doctors over there too, but I can't get to them. I'm against I have an L desk, and I'm up against my desk, and I'm kind of sandwiched in the filing cabinet behind me.
This is one of the first handles Kenny Helvie made. It was just an
The
oval
oval.
handle design. First ones were very square looking.
These are very round.
So if you have one that has the,
Can you all give us the background and history of Helvie knives and how you came about purchasing? So kind of where it came from Ken and Helvie to you all.
we had the very beginning of how I met Ken Helvie. My roommate in college grew up next door to him. When we left school, Ken Helvie hired him to sand knife handles. Out of the blue, he called me and said Ken Helvie wants an Indian head drawn, and I was an art major in school. I said, okay. So he gave me the address, and I showed up there. And
What year was that?
1992, but I wasn't working there. I showed up, and they were out sanding these knife handles, and I thought, wow, that's really neat. And Ken Helvie talked to me about drawing an Indian, and he said, you really like these knives? I said, yeah. He said, well, sit down and start sanding. So I started sanding. He gave me a knife, took it home. I didn't know anything about wood carving, and Ken Helvie was into wood carving, but he did not like anybody's knives. So that's why he started making his own in 1988 was the first one that was made. But as far as my involvement, in March of 93, he had our mutual friend call me. He needed help. He got a big order in. Wanted to know if I would sand knives for the day. So I sat there, and when I was done, he said, do you want a job, part-time job? So that was March of 1993. So we helped, me and the other friend of mine was John Carper, helped Kenny start advertising his knives in other places. Looking through chip chats was the big thing, and finding different companies that sold wood carving tools and just sending them free knives. And eventually the store started carrying him. So then in 2001, Holly comes in, and so she's because every Helvie knife came with a sheath back then. So we made dummy knives, and she sewed them in her apartment and became involved in that, and then eventually started coming to the shop and learning how to sand the handles, glue them together.
I learned gluing them up first at the shop.
And we did that for a few years. Then 2004, Ken Helvie said, I'm done. And I said, me too. 11 years, this is enough. I'm tired of it. And he said, well, if you don't buy it, it'll be the end of it. And I said, well, then end it. And he kept on harping about it. Man, you gotta do it. You can do it. So I had a friend of mine that went in as a partnership, and we bought Kenny Helvie out in 2004.
What you need to know, though, you need to tell them, all of us that bought into it all had full-time jobs.
Yeah.
So everybody was working, 40 plus hours a week already.
So it moved to Tipton in 2004, and then we started introducing natural wood knives was our first change. Going with walnut, oak, and then in 2006, we approached Gerald Sears and asked him about a signature knife after watching, it was a Michael Jordan commercial to where they never mentioned the word Nike. Every shoe was Air Jordan. And I thought, why can't we get a big name wood carver to endorse our knives? And Gerald sold our knives. It took a lot of convincing because he said that was the dumbest thing he'd ever heard of. I said, well, I want you to design the handle. And he says, I like your handles, and nobody will buy a knife just because my name's on it. So I just let it go. And then I think a month later, made one out of cherry, left the blade square, and just sent it to him. He finally sent it back, shaped out into that handle style that I showed you, with his signature on a piece of paper, and we burnt one. He took 6 of them.
He burnt one, not we.
Yeah, well, he took 6 of them to his first seminar in 2006, and he had 12 students. And when he got home, he called me and said the other 6 wanted to kill him because he only had 6 knives. So that was the start of it, and it just started rolling. Well, Ken Helvie in July of '06 wanted me to meet him in Carvers at their show, and he introduced me to Floyd Radigan.
In Indiana, that's Carvers, Indiana.
Carvers, Indiana. And he said, Floyd Radigan is going to be one of the next up and coming wood carvers. You need to get him on board. So I did not approach Floyd until 2007, the following year. And he became our second signature series guy. So after that, I asked a few, and I've been asked by some of them also. So it's been both ways. Some people want to come on board. At some point we had to draw a line that, you know, not everybody can have one of these. So now it's kind of up to us who gets them or not. But that's the history. Well, I guess 2009, the partner we had, he told me the same thing I heard from Ken Helvie when I walked in one day. I'm done. You got a month to get this stuff out of my, out of his pole. It was in his pole barn, which is great big. And I'm like, man, I got a little shop out back, and that's it. We made it fit.
It's about this big out there.
It's got 2 paths, one to the front door and one to the side door.
There's a lot of times if we're working, we're like back to back.
Yeah. I have to buff a knife like this.
Yeah, right.
So, you
But
know,
we build onto the back though. We did build onto the back, which is where he stands back there now. It's like, it's all dusty, but that's the really dusty room. But even though there's a bunch of dust collectors and everything hanging from the ceiling and all this stuff, it's still very, very,
but
very
you can
dusty.
find every spider web in there.
Yeah,
'Cause it
they're
shows up.
highlighted.
It's like dew in the morning.
So actually, it's just the 2 of you that are producing the knives?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I still work 40 hours a week where I got to punch a time clock. So we do the best we can, and we are slowing down a little.
We have an 11-year-old. We're kind of we're kind of missing some things, and we don't want to no more. It gets kind of crazy for us. We it's a juggling act, you know, to try to juggle everything between work, business, home. Because I homeschool our daughter. I haven't worked outside of the home for the last 8 years. No, actually, it's been 9 years. Skylar's 11. So a little over 9 years ago, I have not worked outside of the home because we both worked in automotive. That's where we met. So I haven't worked there. Well, again, for 9 years, I stay home and take care of Skylar and homeschool and all that stuff.
And guys, how long does it typically take? How much time does it take to make one knife? I mean, is it an hour total time for a single knife, or?
It's not made knife by knife. It's a batch. Batch
me and
runs.
Stetson was talking about this last week, and we kind of figured out that you make about 2 knives an hour, roughly. If you go from complete cutting the wood into strips, because, you know, these come in panels, and then once they're stripped this way, then you have to cut them into these 5-inch pieces, and then each piece has to be routed for this blade to slide into. And then these got to be cut and cleaned, and based on that, I would probably say maybe 30 minutes a knife total, somewhere around there.
But it's not done knife for knife. You know, that's because we've had a lot of people say, how do you do so many? You know, after this many years, you kind of get it down to a science, and you do everything in batches. You don't stop and go, okay, here's one order, I'm done. No, it's batches, you know, where there's this many glued up, and that runs through the entire system from being shaped to sanded to buffed to sharpened and shipped out. And then we start another round and glue that round up, and that's how it works. If you do it knife by knife, oh my gosh, we'd never survived.
And really, to give us a better idea, how many knives do you think you produce in a year?
That's kind of a loaded question too, because there's a lot of factors in there. There's factors on, and it varies because outside of making knives, we have issues with, we take care of our parents. Well, both of us, he just recently lost his dad. I lost my dad a few years ago, or several years ago, and we do a lot for our mothers. So between all of that and things that happen in life, it's kind of varied every year. What do you think is a good estimated number? If you, statistically speaking, we
I
can do
would
an
say a
estimate.
good estimate is probably 3,800 to 4,000, somewhere.
Very
in there.
nice.
A year.
That's impressive.
That's probably real close. You know, when I worked for Ken Helvie, of course, there was two of us, and sometimes a third person would come in and sand. But the most Ken Helvie ever made in a year is he made, I think it was 5,300 and some odd knives in a year. That was around 96 or 97. Wood carving just boomed that year. But you know, I leave work at 3 p.m. and she starts gluing knives up on the kitchen table. When I get home, 45 minutes later, I grab them, go out the door, and I put them in the vices before they get so hard that I can't move them.
Because they start to set up.
Because you have this blade, and believe it or not, when you put that, you've seen our little C-clamps go on there like this. It presses that black piece and can make that blade cock one way or the other. Or it can even make it move back a hair. You would think so because it's a 1/2-inch slot and a 1/2-inch piece of metal, but I don't know how it does it. But
That's magic.
It'll be a little bit crooked this way, so then I got to straighten it back out and put it in there. And yeah, and every time I've got the C-clamp on it, I look down the seam of that knife to that blade and try to get it as straight as possible. And the next day I'll take one out and it'll be like that. I'm like, what? So then I got to chop it out and
Got to start over.
see if it's truly bent or it was just pressed that way. If it goes back, then it's okay. But if it's bent, then it goes in the trash. Which in 2004, you wouldn't believe how many knives I threw away.
Trying to learn to sharpen.
Kenny Helvie would not teach me to sharpen. And when we bought his business, he gave me a 4-hour crash course, said, you'll figure it out. No, I bet it took
That was an expensive year.
6 or 7 months before it clicked, before I really understood what I was doing with the blades. Now the handles, I'd done everything but sharpen a knife for Ken Helvie. So that's our work week. She glues up 45 or starts when I leave work and glues up a batch of knives Tuesday through Friday.
Up until I make dinner.
And then Saturday I sit out there and I start shaping these on that belt sander to whatever they ordered. And then Sunday and Monday I will sharpen the blades. And then that's why you don't see many pictures of knives on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, because gluing up knife handles and cutting steel to bring her in for tomorrow's glue up round.
Well, and then you got to trim all these spacer pieces or cut. He has to cut them. And then I take a knife. This is the only carving I get to do. Then I take a knife and I have to cut off all the burrs. You can't leave. They have to be completely flat. Okay. And when you got all these burrs on, which happens when you cut them, that's why I have to trim those off. And you're like, oh, that's no big deal. Try trimming about 200 of those.
See,
I have scars on my thumbs.
We got so many vices because we used to glue up in one day. So we would try to glue 109 knives in one day versus doing 25 to 30 knives throughout the week. Seems to work better than sitting out there trying to look at 100 knives, see if they're straight. But then on Saturday, I would try to shape over 100 knife handles, about all my hands could take. But that's just shaping them out. Then you're sitting there doing this constantly, keeping everything as round as possible so you don't have flat spots. And so there's let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 steps of sanding before it before they hit the buffer to get the shine put on them. And some of you may not know that there's no finish on this. This is just white compound on a buffing wheel. And so people that don't like the slickness of the handles, you can take sandpaper and it'll still be colored, but you'll get all that shine off there and it won't be as slick in your hands. Or if you like the shininess and you're like, man, I've had this knife for 5 years and it's getting dull, tape up the blade, take some sandpaper, sand it, get your oils back out of the handle, go to a buffing wheel, white compound, it'll shine right back up.
Rich, is that the same for the hardwood handles as well as the laminated ones? It's all done with a white compound.
If they have grain in them, like walnut and oak, I spray those with lacquer. Right. Okay. If they're cherry, maple, beech, I do buff them with white compound. Right. Okay. And boy, they shine up too.
I've got a couple of Signature Series knives. My most recent one is my Dwayne Gosling Baby Beaver, but I've also got one of two of Blake's knives, and I just wondered whether they were buffed or whether they were lacquered because I was trying to look at the difference with them.
Blake's knives are made of walnut, so his would have been sprayed with lacquer, and right. I put a really light coat on, and then the second coat light, then the third coat I spray just a little bit harder, and I let it set up, and it seems to seal everything.
Yeah, if you take walnut across that buffing wheel with that white buffing compound, it looks horrid.
Yeah, you got
because it
white
sticks in the grain, and it's like, ew. That, yeah. And we know that because we've tried it.
Now, a long time ago, I used to buff all the Signature knives, and then I would wood burn them, and my tip kept getting all gunked up with the white compound. So now I have a buffing wheel it's really stringy. I don't know how to explain it. It's not real hard like the one we use for these pack-a-wood handles. Yeah. And I just lightly put buffing compound on it, and I buff them after I burn them, and for some reason, no compound goes into my burn lines, which I'm thankful for because I guess that they're picking back out. But
he actually will buff the ones that he wood burns because I don't know. I think through the years, because I've had to get stronger hands to do that. I think I push too hard, and it fills the lines up where he wood burns, and then I get in trouble. So I don't do them anymore. He doesn't know it, but I did it on purpose.
I did go through a period where I did spray every Signature knife. So somebody could have someone say, hey, this cherry one's not buffed. I did spray some of them, and it just got to where when I touched them with the buffing wheel, when I did the blades, it would leave a really weird smudge mark on that black piece. So I only do it if I have to, and that's Blake's, and there's a couple other ones that are made out of walnut, and there's none made out of oak, so it'd be just the walnut ones.
As far as Signature Series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. That's Richard Embling. He's from Wells.
Oh.
Okay.
How you doing?
I only know because I watched.
Got a good first name.
Yeah, Richard. We just call him Rich.
Could be called
Thanks, guys. That's great. Cheers.
Yeah.
Hey, Rich, when you sharpen the knives, what grit sandpaper do you use?
Start with 80 grit, and then I go all the way up to 1200 grit.
Wow.
There's a video, if I don't, out there on YouTube, and I don't know if you do any kind of YouTube, but one of the most latest videos we did on YouTube, Tony, he took a knife, or excuse me, not a knife, a piece of steel for detail. There's a thinner piece like this, and he put it in our dummy handle that he uses to sharpen and sharpen the blades before we sell them, because some people buy the blades. And he talks about the different grits of sandpaper as he's using them and sorting them out. I don't know if that's interesting to you or not, but it's out there on YouTube.
No, it is. It's just like I said. For me, it's one of those novel things. I mean, it's what I call tuning a knife, is keeping it as sharp as like Dave Stetson keeps his. When you watch Dave pull a knife through a block of wood, it just seems to fall away. So it's ultimate in us trying to keep it sharp so we can imitate Dave, or your godfather. Imitate your godfather.
Yep, I was gonna say Dave's the Godfather.
Yeah. And so to imitate the Godfather, how do you get your knife tuned and keep it in that shape?
Well, there's a lot of people, and I've seen, and I'm not going to name anybody, but I've seen knife sharpeners that have 120 grit on their belt sander, and they're at a show sharpening people's knives. That knife's not very sharp. It's gonna cut your finger. It's gonna cut wood. But a knife that has been done at 800 grit to 1,000 to higher is going to be sharper. So if I was going to tune up a sharp knife, if this knife started going dull and I strop it and I still don't like the way it cuts, I'm going to go to probably like 600 grit until I start getting a little burr, not consistent. Then I'm going to go to 800 or 1,000. And I'm going to work it on my stone until I get that burr.
Right.
You're going to have a very sharp, you're going to have it as sharp as what you got it from me.
Okay.
And I just use these. I'm not sure.
The diamond sticks?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I
They're
think
cheap.
I think the last one is like super fine, and I'm not really sure if super fine means it's 1,000 or 800. But those seem to work, and these are the ones Don Mertz gave me, and I'm sure he probably used them for a long, long time.
You can do the same thing with sandpaper. The only issue is sandpaper's cheap. I'll never take that away, but it don't last very long either. So I guess if this is something that people are going to do all the time, it would behoove you to buy something maybe that's a little more permanent than just buying all these different grits of sandpapers and gluing them onto something flat or whatever. I guess, again, that's a personal preference.
The higher you go up and get your burr, the sharper your blade's going to be, and the easier it is to knock those burrs off on a strop.
Yeah.
If you got the big burry teeth, you got to strop it a long time to get them off. They're real super fine ones, they'll come off easier.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, guys. Holly?
Mhm.
Can you talk
There?
a little bit about the challenges that you all face with ordering and your website, and the fact that you are just a group of two people that make these knives? Some of the people on here may not know, some of the challenges that you've been faced with and how you've handled those, and why they can't just get online and order a knife anytime they want to. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's a very interesting and good topic to talk on. Since they're all handmade, they're custom handmade. Maybe he'll elaborate later why we say they're custom handmade. Anything that's custom, anything that's custom handmade takes a lot of time. There's a lot of steps. And we can only take orders, so many orders. And I got to admit, even this last time when we turned on the website and took orders, they came in so fast that we didn't even have a chance to stop a lot of them before we shut the website off again. And, I'm not going to lie, that's a blessing. There's probably people who wish that they could be that blessed. But on the flip side of that, there's also a curse involved with it, that when you take that many people's money, you're obligated to them, and that's only rightfully so. And it's tough to be obligated to hundreds of people and to get their things out to them. I have to say, I think the majority of the people are very pleasant, very understanding, and very patient. And I'll be the first to admit, patience is not my strong suit by no means. Asking. But it's a lot of other people aren't so patient and aren't so pleasant, even though it's out there. I say we, but I talk to the customers, and I communicate with them on different genres of methods, whether it's phone, email, Facebook, Instagram, messaging, whatever. And most of them are pleasant, but the ones that aren't act like they didn't know what to expect. And we have it out there. We have it all over our website. And when they place an order, it's on their order, the information of the lead time. Also that they will receive tracking when it's shipped. I don't know I don't know if people maybe don't read anymore, or don't really look at things, and that's why they maybe ask the same. So many people ask the same questions all the time. And it doesn't matter how many times we put it out there or how many different ways we communicate it through all these social medias, website, orders, etc. It's always the same questions. Because sometimes I almost feel like I need a recorder and I'm just going to hit play every time it gets asked. But I get a lot of questions of, well, why don't you want my money? Well, I'm willing to pay you and wait. Honestly, there comes to be like an ethics or an integrity there of how far out do you take somebody's money and go, oh, well, it's going to be 6 months. I don't think that's right. So we don't do that. And we also have to keep things balanced for ourselves, you know, with family, and he works a full-time job. We have a little girl. And we do have some friends. Of course, we haven't been able to, you know, spend any time with our friends this year because of this pandemic.
I got 5 friends.
I
I was counting myself. I got 4 friends.
Well, if we're going to do that, I talk to myself a lot. So I guess I have a lot of friends. I don't know. I get the answers I want that way. But we really do walk a fine line on how we try to manage our business, even though I get a lot of people who tell me that we poorly manage our business. He should quit his job. We should hire people. There's a lot of things we need to change. I get some really nasty messages sometimes from people. I wish I didn't. I'm not rude to anybody. I just reply back and I thank them for their opinion and I go about my merry way, because 2 wrongs don't make a right. So there's no sense in being nasty back. That doesn't solve any issue either. And everybody does have an opinion, whether or not you share it. We're not looking to hire people. We're not looking to expand. That would completely change the dynamics and who we are. That would not be Helvie Knives. And we don't want to expand. We're not this. I know this sounds weird. We're not looking to get wealthy. We're not. I don't think we're supposed to be wealthy. We're just paying our bills. It's a fine line that we walk sometimes, because we try to work with as many people as we can. We want people to be happy. We're happy that people like what we do. And that's fantastic. He's the hardest working person I know. The hardest working man I've ever met in my life. And that's a lot, because he works all the time. Yeah, I do the wife stuff. I make sure he's got clean underwear. Nobody's going hungry. The house is clean. The kid's taken care of. But he works all the time. And again, we have to draw a line in the sand and go, you know what? We've taken on a whole lot. We can't take on any more until we get through this. And that can be stressful to deal with too. And I don't know if people don't realize that, or I don't want to be cold and say, oh, they don't care. I don't know. But, there is a fine line to when you're obligated that many people. I talked to a fella yesterday, very pleasant. And he almost begged me to take his money, and I told him no. And I know that probably sounds really bizarre. He's like, I know that you'll ship it to me. I'm willing to wait. But that just means that's another person that we're obligated to until we get it shipped. What happens if one of us gets sick? When his father passed unexpectedly, nobody expected that to happen. That pushed everything out about another month. And we're still dealing with that estate. Those are personal things in life that happen to all of us. It's just we're kind of put out there in the front of everybody, and everybody ends up knowing our business because we kind of share it. To let people know, hey, we have your money, but we've had a life-altering change, and it's kind of, everything just went and stopped. I hope people really do appreciate what we're doing. They like what we do, but we don't belong on a pedestal. We just make knives. I hope people appreciate that and understand it. And I guess long-term, if you don't have nothing nice to say, don't. You're not in our position. I will say this, after dealing with our website, we are looking to maybe make some changes with our website to make things easier for both us and our customers. We have our webmaster working on some things. we have about 3 months of work, so we got about 3 months to play around with what we hope might be a positive change for us and our customers to make things manageable. But with change also comes some pains, because some people don't like change. But we'll see how it works out. That was probably really long-winded, and everybody's asleep now.
I do have a question for y'all. I met y'all in Charlotte this year, and I'm a new carver, and you're very nice. I bought two of your knives. How many shows do you do approximately a year like that? Because you bring a lot of knives to those shows.
Well, that was the first time we had brought that many knives. But we don't do that many shows, because he still works a full-time job, and that means that he has to take vacation to go to those shows. Well, if he burns off his vacation to go to these shows like we've done in the past, we don't get a vacation.
No, I understand that. The show was great, and it was great to meet y'all there, and I didn't realize who you were at the time, and but it's been very nice, and I've thoroughly enjoyed your knives. I was just wondering how many shows you did, because it's an easy way to get your knives without having to worry about ordering them. I'm hoping that you'll go next year, because I'll get some more. But
oh yes, sir. We do Tennessee. We can't count. As far as shows, all we do is Charlotte in February, and we're going to be out in, well, as long as I don't cancel it, we're doing Utah for the first time this year, the end of September, the 1st of October. We do our local show here in Carvers, Indiana in July. That probably be canceled too. You know, everything's being canceled. And that's a real small show that we do for our club. That's our local club.
And Holly and Rich, maybe you can speak to, I know there's resellers out there like Bob Statlander, who usually does a lot of shows and carries some of your knives as well. Are there other resellers?
He's never
Bob
carried our knives.
Statlander's never carried our knives.
Oh, I thought I saw some in his pal. Sorry.
No, it's okay. No, we don't have, stores and vendors don't carry our knives anymore. We can't even keep up with retail orders. So the wholesale we no longer do that.
Okay.
So there is no, and that's another thing we see a lot on Facebook. A lot of people's like, well, if we can't get them straight from Helvie, well, who else can we get them from? Signature guys are about it. Outside of us, that's it. And that's if they, and usually when they get their shipment of knives, a lot of them are already sold before they get them.
They gotta wait too. People think we cater to them. No, they get put on a list. And right now, I'm going through the hundreds of web orders we got in 3 hours.
No, it's 4 hours. We gotta give them credit. It was 4.
And then when that gets shut off, or I get the last one out, I will make some signature knives, and these guys will get partial orders because so many of them ordered. Then we'll turn the website back on and do it all over again. Except this time I'll only be on for 10 minutes.
Oh my goodness. You know, again, the reason why, Blake said something about talking about why we do what we do with orders. In January of this year, we announced a specific day and a specific time that we were going to turn it on. That was a very bad idea that will never, ever get repeated again. We do not, and the best way I can explain it, because we pay somebody to do our website. I'm not smart enough to do it myself. And the best way to explain it is, we do not pay for this huge amount of domain space. We are not Amazon. We're just mom and pop Helvie knives. And when hundreds of people were logged on, when that switch got flipped, they crashed our provider's server, because that server is not just specific to Helvie knives. You know, we share that with other people because we only pay for this much domain space. It can't handle that load. And they crashed the server, and that was an absolute nightmare that literally took me a week to get through on just orders. And so, you know, again, there's some people who's make comments of how we take orders, and they think that there is like favoritism, and there's not. Tony, if you called me today and said, Holly, I know you, I've got some of your knives, but I really want to get this rough out knife, I'd say, Tony, call me in about 2.5 months and I'll let you know where I'm at.
Even if I promised to fuel the short bus, would I still go to the back of the list?
You would still go to the back of the list.
Yeah, see, there it is.
Sorry, man. I have lots of little friends.
I'm showing off the Wilson Brother 5. Well, 4 since I don't carve.
Well,
Carving.
and I think one of the other things you could talk about too, Rich, is that you alluded to your art background, and it's really fun to watch you wood burn. Can you speak to a little bit about your background in that?
I got a degree from Ball State University in illustration. My grandfather was a sign painter. So if you go back that far, by the time I was, I believe, the 5th grade, we were writing Old English out with a quill pen. And then I was sat down there fascinated with the signs that he was lettering. And he kept buying me art books. Now, he couldn't draw other than basic cartoons. And then he kept giving me books and says, you can go farther, not cartoons, draw humans, draw faces. And he always pushed me, and I kept doing it. And then I wanted to sign paint like him. So we started lettering when I was, I think, 14 or 15 with a brush. And then by 18, me and him was lettering race cars and semi trucks together. He would do one side and I'd do the other. He'd always beat me, and his side always looked better. But it was really neat getting to spend time with him. And so I went to school for art, and I had to take almost everything that they offered, and then you have to pick something you want to major in. And my major was drawing illustration, but you know, I took painting and sculpture and ceramics and art history, which I couldn't stand. But then when I got done, I had a drawing instructor for the last 2.5 years of school. And we didn't get along. No matter what I did was never good enough. So when right before I graduated, I have to meet with him because he's my advisor too. And I made up my mind that I was not going to pursue art. Once I just wanted to get done, get the diploma, and get out, because he made me hate art. So now it's become like a hobby. But if you've seen the knives that I do, they're always heavily influenced by lettering. And that goes back to the love of lettering. Yeah, I can
rock
draw
and roll. The love of rock and roll.
Yeah, rock and roll, baby. Yeah. Yeah. So that's how that came about.
I don't have any talent.
Well, but then again, you don't ride the short bus either.
You know, that's funny. No, this is Helvie Knives. I'm like the silent partner that deals with all the other stuff in the background so that he can make knives for everybody. I do the things that you can train a monkey to do, like literally train a monkey to do.
You all wouldn't get him if it wasn't for her. They'd just be still laying out in the shop. No, she works really hard too.
Oh my goodness.
It's not just me.
Yeah.
It's a joint partnership all the way through.
Monkey work. Oh my goodness.
I take my creative fire from her.
Oh my word.
I ain't burning, am I? Is there smoke coming out my ears? Is Wahoo on here? Hey, Blake.
Hey,
I don't know how to tell who's all on. I don't
Wahoo
know.
on here?
I don't see him on. I see John's on here, but I don't see Wahoo.
No Bart?
Don't see Bart either.
He might have to be he might be working now. I don't know.
Bart's laying under the short bus, fixing something. Wahoo's standing back there going, I don't think that's it, Bart.
All right, guys, here's your opportunity. It's time to ask questions. So anything you all ever wanted to ask Helvie Knives, now's your chance.
All right.
Hey, do you guys have a video on how you actually sharpen them? Just for wanting to sharpen them at home? Do you have a video out there anywhere?
There's two, one on belt sander and one
On our YouTube channel, And our YouTube channel is just called Helvie Wood Carving Knives. There's 4 words, but I think if you go to YouTube and just search Helvie Knives, it'll pull up our channel. There is a, hello, there is a, there is a,
We just wrote that
it's me
down.
calling. There is a plethora of videos out there where he's doing stropping or he's using those Fordham stones. And then he actually does a video of how he's shaping and sharpening a piece of steel into a blade. And he talks about the different, I tried to get video of him sharpening them, but our shop is so small that we're literally dancing around each other when I'm trying to get the different, because he'll move from one side to the other side on the belt as he's sharpening blades. But that's out there on YouTube too. See if there's something out there that might be of interest or helpful to you. I don't know if you're on Instagram or Facebook, but we're on there too. If there's things that you still have questions about later, you can reach out to us, and maybe in our spare time, we can, that can be something that we can address in another video at a later time
We
and
did
put out
that
there.
one, I think it's called repairing it, fixing a broken tip and sharpening a knife. I did a tune-up job on the diamond stones and a strop.
Mhm.
And then just last week or the week before, we did one on my belt sander, like what I do now instead of versus by hand. I use the belt sander. So we did a
Yeah.
video.
Hey, Holly,
I can't hear. Oh, okay.
there's a big difference between your all's knives and somebody else's knives who may just be like a handle maker or just tell me a little bit about the process from start to finish as far as everything being handmade, and comparing that to somebody who just takes a blade that's made from somebody else and stuck in a handle.
Okay.
Well, you've seen our stock steel.
Let me steal.
I have to shape whatever blade somebody orders.
I'm gonna go get a panel. I'm just gonna get a panel of this wood just for poops and giggles.
What I think of handmade is I know you have to use machines to make something. If I was to take this and get a file and use actually just my hands, I would get one done a month probably. But to me, handmade is, it looks like this. So I can get any, if you look at Don Mertz's blades, especially Don Mertz, because he's got so many different shapes. They're all made out of here. But I hold this with my hand on a belt sander. There's no jigs. Everything's in my head on what shape it needs to be. And it's all made that way. The whole time this knife is in my hand. Sometimes in both hands.
I'm gonna fuck it in here.
But to me, that's what handmade is. And then if you throw in the word custom, that's Blake. If you sent me a picture, a drawing, and I gave you the dimensions, because you wanted out of colored wood because we've already stripped it all. But if I hadn't stripped it, I could make it whiter. So you send me a picture and I try to make this knife exactly like what you drew. And I think that becomes custom. And we do that constantly for people. So I think our knives are handmade, but you do have to pick finger groove, Floyd Radigan. But we also will customize. I think Bob K there.
He's got his own handle.
We customized. He sent me a picture and an idea and how long he wanted it, and we made. And that goes along with every signature knife. Every signature knife came from that person whose names they drew.
But we've also had people send him paper cutouts on what they wanted their blade shape to look like and want to know if he can shape it that way. So he's done that too.
So you talk about somebody that would be a handle maker that buys already formed blades, they can't do much. They can't alter the blade too much because it's already got a bevel and a cutting edge. All they can do is maybe come into the part that's not sharp.
The spine
of it, and maybe put a half circle in there or cut it this way.
Or cut it out entirely.
And then they just glue it into a handle, and and then they shape the handles out too, but they're not really making the blade part of it.
I think something that makes it different too, and that people don't ever see in the videos because we don't show everything. We kind of backed off on showing certain things because I think there's people who wanted to maybe try to mimic some stuff, but these go through 4 sanding processes. No, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this last one's out front. Actually 5 sanding processes before those even hit the buffing wheel. Not too many people are going to go through that many steps to get rid of the fine scratches to get that smooth finish and then go over and then to buff it to make sure you get that shiny finish. It's a lot of steps.
See, we take a lot of pride in our handles and not being all jacked up looking, pointy finger
Or
marks on
uniform.
this one having a flat spot, really sticking out. In here, seeing the really hard, deep gouge marks that the belt sander leaves. We try to get as many of them out as possible. Make it smooth so you don't get the splinters in your hands, or you know, if you carve with this handle all day long, this ridge right here is going to make your hands hurt. Well, I've seen handles with ridges all over the place, and it, to me, would be so uncomfortable that I wouldn't buy one, but I don't think you could carve very long with it without your hands hurting somewhere. So that's why we try to get them as smooth as we do with all the steps we take.
You know, but this is, I don't know if we can hold it up like this. It's 40 inches in length. Okay. It's 10 inches wide. I think putting it there, close my fridge. It's 3/8 inch thick. I have a whole skid of this. This is the Dynalux out in the garage, and it comes on a skid because it weighs several hundred pounds because it is heavy. And we are able to buy this wood in bulk. That's another thing we know, and all these people going back to why we do what we do and the ordering that tell us that we don't know how to run our business because we shut our website off like we do to make things more manageable for ourselves. We buy everything in bulk. So if you want to switch gears and talk business, that's what I do. You can't spend all the money you make either, because the only way a small business can survive in today's society is to be able to buy in bulk. And most of the vendors, if not all of them that we deal with, are even bigger companies than we are. So we're just a very small fish in a very large pond. So at any given time, we're going to have literally thousands and thousands of dollars just in wood and steel. And then before everybody goes on this kick, I hear this lot, you should raise the prices of your knives. Why?
I don't want
to. But when you do that, you can't reach everybody. You know, again, we've said it before, and I know this is bizarre. People don't believe it. We're not in it to get rich. If we were, we'd have a totally different business practice.
I just want somebody that's on a fixed income to maybe have to save money, maybe 3 months, but they can buy one of our knives versus.
That's why we got the economy line.
You know, I don't want to raise the prices. Like I've seen other knives. I can't believe how much they sell for because I know that they're not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
We buy in bulk. And, you know, that's the bottom line. That allows us to keep our prices where they are, even though we have to fork out the money up front. You do save money in buying in bulk, and that allows us to keep our prices where they are too. We don't buy one sheet of wood.
Yeah, last time we had 330 sheets of it. And guess who had to move it 3 times? It's like 4,000 pounds.
Oh my goodness. He's not telling you though that when we ordered gravel, I'm the one who shoveled about 4 tons of gravel though.
Yeah, but I had to go get it in a trailer.
You know, again, there's a lot of things that go on with what we do that we don't share. Most people are not interested in the dynamics that goes on behind. There's a lot of stuff that has to take place just to even run a business, a small business at that. And there's nobody else to blame. If something goes wrong, it's either his fault or it's my fault. There's nobody else.
And you know what? 99.9% of the time, it's my fault. That's why I'm still talking to you today.
Oh, Lord.
Me and little Blake here.
Hey guys, the knife collection, the hand carved knives. What was the total count on that? How many were created?
I think 147.
That's the
really
ones we
impressive.
possess, though. That's,
Oh, what's he?
are you went how many's like competed total in the years that we did it, or the ones that we have possession of?
The ones that you have possession of.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Well,
was
I
that
know
one?
we don't have one of yours. So what's going on here? You know?
Hint, hint.
We'll work to correct that.
Well, I believe
Give me Stetsons.
I believe 147.
He thinks about 147. This was the latest one we got from Dave Stetson that he promised us for years. It is a wood carver.
Carving a carver,
Carving a
carving
wood
a
carver,
carver.
carving a wood carver, carving a wood carver. That is, most of them are in tubes. This one's not in a tube yet. I got
Yeah, we
lazy, I
gotta get a
guess.
special too. But
Yeah, but that's it.
those
No, that's not, no, you're gonna,
I always thought was.
I'm gonna snap your neck. You didn't see that. You're in trouble.
That was all one piece.
What, this one? How about this one, Dave?
It was all carved in one piece. Not.
Okay.
This is one piece.
He's talking about the carver,
I
carving a
know.
carver.
No,
carving a
I don't
carver.
even remember that one. Is that the one that came up missing last time I was in Congress?
Or was it this one? Was it this one? Or this one?
Yeah, those were on my table in Converse. They came up missing. I wondered where they went.
His toolbox?
Believe it or not, I walked out the door and some shady looking guy out there says, "Hey, I got these two carvings. You want to buy them?" Of course, I could hardly understand him. Hey, talking like this.
As I say, we're in the office, and the office is, Dave's been here. It's like the dustiest museum ever of wood carvings. Because I don't dust them.
Those
There's
are,
too
some
many.
of, those are usually some of the best too.
Yeah, yeah. They get this when we show people. We pluck them off and go, look.
I made the trip to Marv's apartment, so I got to see Marv's apartment, and he had all the carvings plus the clay models, plus all the cobwebs going across all of them. So, yeah, you get to see it all.
You know then. You see what I'm saying.
Yep.
Hey, if you visit their shop, their office is really sparkling clean.
Yeah, his shop is filthy. You know, I do go out there and I try to clean sometimes, but it usually ends up in an argument and I have to get out of it.
When I walked in there, it was the first time ever I've tripped over dust.
Because it's standing.
You know, we don't call it dust.
It's man glitter.
It's even colored.
It is.
Greens, blues, orange, yellow. You ought to see the boogers you blow out of your nose afterwards.
You shouldn't be doing that now if you're wearing that new face mask.
What face mask?
Busted.
Hey, Holly, you all also collect wood carvings. How many different wood carvings do you have, do you think?
You know, one time I did count them.
That was years ago.
Yes. I would say there's a 1,000. Somewhere around there.
We've got shelves.
But
Well, there's book cabinets. You know, there were bookshelves. There's all the walls are lined with shelves. There's stair step. The hutch behind us. They're everywhere. They're even out in the living room.
You guys need to do a tour of all them carvings sometime. We need
You
to
know,
see
that's
them all.
what, you're right. Somebody made the comment, they wanted to see them all. And we have every intention of doing that. We just kind of get busy in what we're doing. And then when we, late at night, when we're sitting down together and we're actually going, we really need to do that video. And we're like, I'm tired, we'll do that tomorrow. And then tomorrow never comes.
How about this beauty?
Yeah.
Black sheep family.
Hey, Stetson, you know you are part of the black sheep family now.
Uncle Dave.
No, that's Uncle Bob. He's the godfather.
Right.
That's bad, Uncle Bob.
Bob
Could,
Hershey.
could you revisit the stones that you suggested, the grit, and what levels those were?
The three that I have are medium, fine, and super fine. They have no grit on them. Maybe if you look them up on the internet, they may have a grit.
It's the medium's 600, and then the fine is 600, and the other is 1200 on them.
So the medium's probably like, what, 300? Maybe.
I think it's 600. I think it's
What's
600, Rich.
Medium 600. Then I got fine and super fine.
Perfect. Thank you. I lost track of what those grits were.
They're actually really cheap to buy too. You can buy them online if you Google Fordham like that. And because like he said, Don Mertz gave us these, and there's other people who's watched some of our videos and asked about them, and I sent them a link where I seen them online, and they're actually cheap to buy.
There's a DMT brand out there as well that I bought diamond stones or diamond cards out of. They're like size of credit cards. And I think those were available like at Woodcraft.
Are they like these,
Okay.
Tony?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're
Oh,
dice.
okay, those are neat.
Yeah, they're cards similar to the same thing that Rich has.
I like those. Those are wider.
Yeah, they're wider, but they're about the size of a credit card. So yeah, they work just the same. Same grits too.
Do you guys have a favorite carving in your collection? Of any of the you've picked up?
You have a favorite?
You're asking with all the carvers online who probably donated some of them.
Oh, actually, you know when you say
Little
donated, these
competition
were
never
not
hurt
all
anybody.
donated. Yeah.
Isn't the Godfather the best?
You know, oh, honestly, this one is one of my favorite. I'm the one who bought this from Dave. She's one of my favorites. I am. It's very hard to find someone who can do female features. So, you know, and we have most of our carvings, of course, are caricatures. And Rich is looking on the wall because we need a ladder to get them off. So, I mean, we're not going to reach them. We're vertically challenged anyways, you know. Very tall.
Holly, she's like looking in a mirror.
Oh, you're very sweet.
Well, now I'm sad the Christmas turd wasn't the favorite.
Oh, this was one that Rich had Chris Hammock do for me because he commissioned him. We always had dogs up until here recently. So I like dogs more than I like people. Sorry, that sounds really rude. But I've always been a dog lover, and we used to have dogs, and our last one just died in November at 15 and a half years old. But I was always a dog lover, so Chris Hammock carved this one. And again, I don't know what you can tell, but the female features are still there, which I am fascinated by the female features. It might be just because I'm a female, but you know, that's something that is a challenge for a lot of people too. Oh,
I've always liked this carving. I think just because of the skinny legs and hands.
Bartimus?
Some of you guys know.
Is that Bartimus?
Mm-hmm. 2017.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them. There's just a lot of carvings. Oh my goodness. A lot of stuff. Not very many females though.
Well, you know, you talk about carvings. Probably the first carving that I got, it was I took his class, Gerald Sears. You know, I've always liked his cowboys, and I met him. He was our first signature guy, so I've always been kind of a Gerald Sears fan. So we have a 22-inch cowboy he carved. It's
all the way up there on the wall on the
yeah,
shelf.
I can't reach it. I need a 6-foot ladder. You know, I'm fans of all of them, really. There's not a carving I don't like except the blue knife. Which
Stop it.
Which was John.
Stop it. Stop it.
The blue knife.
Yeah, we're not showing it. Just stop it. Everybody has their own carving technique.
That's not even a technique. I would feel better if the guy had no arms, legs, and was blind, and he sent that to me. Then I'd be impressed.
Stop it. Stop it.
No, I'm just kidding.
I've seen the blue knife.
Yeah, me too, John.
I'm not lying, am I, guys?
No.
No.
You're being pretty kind, I thought.
Now we got, you know, what I would like to know is how many different carvers do we have sitting in here?
Oh my.
Man, I bet there's got to be at least
good couple hundred or better.
three
a few
or
hundred.
400 different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's got to be.
I mean, we probably have more Don Mertz, Floyd Radigan, and Mark Akers than anybody else.
We got a lot of Dwayne's too.
Yeah.
Got a lot of Dwayne's.
We got like 15 Barton Wilson carvings, I believe. We got 2 John Overby carvings, though.
He's not listening.
He unmute me?
Yeah. We have some Catherine Overcash too. I like Catherine Overcash, the bark carvings that she does. I like the whimsical fairy tale things too, as much as I like the female caricatures. So we've got some of hers. There's, oh my gosh, Arnold Smith. I love Arnold Smith. We have a lot of Arnold Smith carvings. He's really good, and he's a nice, humble fella.
We do have 5 from The Godfather, though.
We have none that I've done.
Yeah, there's even a couple of my carvings in here.
Yep.
We ain't showing them because they sit next to the blue knife. That way they look better. My carvings look better next to the blue knife.
I'm a word.
Well, we are coming up on an hour and a half. We've got about 5 or 10 minutes left, so I will go ahead and check and see if there's any other questions from anybody else pertaining to Helvie knives or anything that Rich and Holly does. Any other questions? So if not, Rich and Holly, we appreciate you all joining us. We appreciate what you do. I can speak for all the carvers on here that I think without your all's influence, a lot of us probably wouldn't have made it as far as we have because of the quality of tools. So, you know, keep that up. We understand that. Yeah, we understand the stress that you're under as far as producing them. And I will say, and again, I'll speak for people that use your knives, they're worth the wait. So if you don't have one and you're waiting on one, wait. Don't buy something that's not going to do the job for you. Wait until you get a Helvie because you won't be sorry for it. I'll thank Larry Green again for doing the recording and providing the software today. Thanks to Tom Bate again for advertising and setting up the Facebook page and the YouTube channel and the Instagram page. And again, thank you all for joining us. Next week, tune in at the same time, 3 p.m. Eastern. We're going to have Goofballs by Dan on. I think Dan was on here earlier. I'm not sure if he's still on because I can't see everybody, but that'll be our guest speaker next week. Again, we ask everybody to advertise this, share it with each other, share it with other carvers, have them come out and join us. Again, it's a way for us to share when a lot of people are staying inside until we can meet again out in the carving circuit. So hopefully we'll be able to do that soon. Rich and Holly, thanks again for what you do, and we'll tune in next week. So thank you all for joining us.
Thanks, Blake.
We'll see you all soon.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you. Bye.
See you, John.
See ya.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate different whales.
Hey, thank you.
See you, Richard.
See you,
Bye,
Tony.
Tony.
Take care.
See ya.
Watch your
Thank
mailbox, Holly. I'll send you one.
What's that?
I said, watch your mailbox. I'll send you one.
All right.
I'll be watching.
We love them.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're gonna listen to that for a while longer than.
No, it's done.
See you, Dave.
Adios, guys.
See you, Dave.
See ya. Bye, Blake.
Bye. Thank you all.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I did.
Cheers, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. See you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rich and Holly. That was great.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for watching and not falling asleep.
End it.
I guess it's over.
Yeah.
Is it over, Blake?
Yeah, we'll stay on here and talk about the next one. Make sure that we know what we're doing. So
Okay, so we're just gonna clip off here then. Okay.
all right.
See ya.
Talk to y'all soon. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
See you.
Yes. So I messaged Goofball by Dan. He hasn't responded, but I'm assuming I think he was still on there when you were saying that he was there.
Okay.
So I'll get